I've always been underestimated. I'm still underestimated. Our community is underestimated. And I've been able to figure out how to get up to this point, but most of the world is underestimated. Most of the world is trying to figure out how to prove themselves or how to do what they love.
Ruben Harris, founder and CEO of Career Karma, they provide all the training and support you need to build a career in tech. Earlier this year, they raised a $40 million Series B round with the intention of helping 1 billion people get their dream job. You mentioned being a visionary, like seeing things before they happen. I think there's a number of examples in your career of that. How do you think clearly? How do you see things early? What allows you to do that?
Bet on the inevitable. As you're thinking about the decisions that you want to make, always bet on the inevitable. So here's a good example. 3 billion people aren't connected to the internet. Will they be connected to the internet? Yes, those are all new users for Career. Companies have gone remote. They've gone online. You think that they're going to all 100% go back to the office? No, that's inevitable. The cat's out of the bag. Colleges were forced to go online. You think that they're all going to go back offline, or they're going to have both? It's inevitable, right? Bet on the inevitable. So whenever you're analyzing trends, bet on the inevitable.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Questionnaire podcast. My name is Callum. On today's episode, we have a very special guest, the man at the moment, Ruben Harris, CEO and founder of Career Karma, the easiest way to find a job training program online. Ruben, welcome to the show. Glad to have you, man.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Okay, so obviously you're coming off a massive week for your company. You guys recently raised $40 million in a Series B round. Can you just kind of talk to us on what that's been like, what this week has been like, and then also what are like the goals moving forward with Career Karma and that fundraising round?
It's been good. I think what I'm proud of with this week is that the story isn't the amount of money that we raise. It's the number of people that we've served. It's the fact that most of the people that gave us the funding are women and people of color. It's celebrating the increased supply, meaning we're able to give more educational and job training opportunities to people, and that there are more financing options by employers being willing to pay for tuition, and that we're just getting started. That's the story, and that's what I wanted. That's what I've been working on to make sure that when this was announced, that it's not just, oh, look at all this money that he raised or for the company, and look at how valuable the company is, and blah blah blah. We're here to solve a problem. We are called to solve a problem, and we will solve this problem. And I'm glad that people are starting to pay attention, because we are just getting started.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm interested to dive in a bit deeper into one thing you said, and you mentioned that more so than like the amount of money that you've raised or the fact that the goal of reaching a Series B, it's like the people that you're able to help and like furthering your mission. Why is it that you care so much about this mission? What makes you so passionate about it? Can you kind of go into that?
Because Career Karma is a product I wish that I had when I was recognized as tech, right? I've always been underestimated. I'm still underestimated. Our community is underestimated. And I've been able to figure out how to get up to this point, but most of the world is underestimated. Most of the world is trying to figure out how to prove themselves or how to do what they love, and they're in survival mode. I want to help. I want to help us get out of survival mode and get closer to not just doing the work that we are good at, but or even the work that we love, but figure out how to get people to the point where they've identified what their purpose is in life, and for them to like be on fire pursuing that, so the world could be better. I mean, I think once you have that type of alignment, a lot of things change.
Okay, cool. You spoke about purpose there. I've obviously read your story. I encourage other people to read it. You've done like a few great articles on Medium about how you broke into tech. You've done another blog post on how you broke into investment banking when you were first starting out. How did you find your purpose? You spoke about helping other people find their purpose. I'm interested to know, like, how did you find your purpose?
It's a good question. Um, a lot of my life, it was focused on, all right, like how do I make the most money possible? But then it started like reorienting my brain to be like, what problems have I faced the most in my life? And what do I know more about than anybody else, right? That's a game I could win, right? I could win the understanding what issue I faced the most, or that like it could be like being broke my whole life. It could be um, having a certain disease or condition. It could be um, whatever. It could be a disability. It could be whatever. Something that like you have an acute pain point I that if you identify it and you think about, all right, does this problem affect millions of billions of people? And once you do that, then you and you feel that you got to ask yourself, am I the person that can solve this issue for people? And can I do that through software? And I think that if everyone goes through an exercise like that, that will not necessarily always get them close to their purpose, that help them figure out their purpose, but it will get them closer than they've ever been.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm interested, like, at what point did you realize, okay, number one, like, I care about this issue, here's my pain point. And then number two, to your point, like, I'm the person that can actually solve it. Like, what was that almost like light switch moment where you were like, this is what I'm meant to do. Like, this is going to be my legacy.
So I like that you said that like that. Um, you're gonna have to do it several times, right? So like I'm a musician, so I've been playing cello for over 30 years, and like, you know, in the classical music world, a lot of people are like, okay, like what's the pinnacle of being a classical musician? Okay, can you play in Carnegie Hall? Well, I've done Carnegie Hall twice now. Um, have I got a Grammy yet? No. Will I? Yes, one day. But okay, cool. So, all right, now I'm also grew up in Atlanta, so how do I get into the music world? And like in the early days, I cold emailed Zaytoven, and Sounds, and that's how I got into like doing stuff in the hip hop world. Um, and my friend Sounds, who was working with Tricky and the Dream, that's how I started doing records with like Travis Porter, and how I met Charlie Jabali, who was 2 Chainz's manager, and a bunch of other people in the early days, and how I got into the club promotion world. Okay, cool. I cracked how to get into the music world. Okay, I graduate from school, you know, and I need to learn business because a lot of musicians don't learn business. Um, and most people that graduate college, when I graduated college was 2010, they go into investment banking. So I gotta get in there. So I figured out how to break into Wall Street. Okay. Then Wall Street got taken over by tech. So, I got to figure out how to break into tech or figure out how to break into tech. So this is a pattern, what I'm telling you. It's like a pattern. You notice. So then I was like, okay, man, there's this pattern. Why don't I talk about it? Why don't I write about it and see if like there's other people that are like me that are out there. And that's where the blog post, Breaking Stars blog post and the Breaking Stars podcast came out. And through the podcast, that's when the business opportunity presented itself that I never thought about before, right? It became a calling. It pulled me towards it. I didn't dream about building career karma back in the day. My co-founders and I just loved talking about breaking into tech and helping people break into tech. And the whole thing sucked us in,
Hmm.
and it became our life's work.
Yeah. You know, so interesting because obviously you just said it was a calling. I don't know if you know Emmanuel Ocho. He's like, he does Speak for Yourself on Fox. He used to be in the NFL, and he has this quote. He's like, the thing about your calling, it will call you. You just need to pick up. And
You
what
need to
you were saying,
listen.
it,
You gotta listen
yeah,
so you can pick up.
yeah. And
Cause
that's the thing, like a lot of
that's
people
another
don't.
thing. You're not listening. You know,
Yeah, 100%.
like right
100%.
now I'm cutting you off and I'm not fully listening. Finish what you're saying. My bad.
No, no, it's all good. Um, I want to dive into, obviously you started with investment banking, and I think one thing when I just listen to you speak, you're like confident. Like you have a confidence that you're going to figure it out. I want to know, like, where does that even, was that there from the start? And like, where does that even come from?
Yeah. Um, it's a good question, man. Because I have had that since I was young. Um, and it's not something that's shared by all my family members. I think the closest person in my family that's like that's my father. My father is the type of person that sets his mind on something. But like, I had somebody else in the interview ask me like where my ambition comes from, and like, I don't really have a clear answer for you other than the fact that um, as I've gone through ups and downs in my life, um, I sh I'm still here on this earth. Let's put it that way. Where you've heard like I wasn't supposed to make it past 25, and then I have like paramedics telling me that I must come from a praying family because I should have died tonight, and then you start reorienting your mind to grounding yourself and realizing that you've been spared and you've been chosen to do something, even though you don't know what it is. And once you there's a something that I tweeted that said, "You better walk into that room like God sent you there." If you know that God sent you somewhere, you're gonna walk in with confidence.
Hmm, I like that.
So
Nice. Okay.
that's how I feel.
Okay. Nice. I'm kind of interested. It's an interesting topic. Do you almost feel that confidence? You said you're not exactly sure where it came from. Obviously, you've had a number of experiences which have built your confidence. Do you think it's almost like built in? Like it's something you're just
It's
born
built in.
with?
It's built in
Okay.
for sure. I think that like there's definitely things that I've done to make it stronger, but like I've always been this way. Um, think about it like, if you roll into an environment by yourself, you could be less confident. But if you roll into an environment with the crew, it's like you and your crew, you feel safer with your people that you're comfortable with, right?
Hmm.
Imagine if you were like surrounded by angels and like
Hmm.
that you can't see. And if you like can walk into a room and like whether you believe in God or not, like universe, whatever you want to call it, like let's ignore anything spiritual. Like just look at
Hmm.
the community that we have and the investors that we have behind us and the powerful black women that have poured into me that got my back that won't let anybody hurt me.
Hmm.
I walk with that confidence. I'm covered.
Hmm.
My
It almost
people,
remind.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It always reminds me. You know when they say like, um, it takes like a village to raise a child. I think that's like a
Yeah,
quote, right?
yeah,
It's like you're walking in with that experience, like
yeah.
the fact that you've been through like trials and tribulations, right?
Yeah,
That's
and and
interesting.
and to say that, I wanted to be very clear. It's not like I grew up in a real traumatic environment. It's not like I
Yeah.
grew up super poor, super rich. I grew up middle class. I have great parents, well-educated parents that raised me well. Um, but I've personally put myself in situations that were not the best that led to the experiences that I shared with you. Um, so yeah, I'm saying all of this just to say that like um, I like what you said around it takes a village because the reason why Career Karma is so community driven is because um, I've seen the power of having a community and a squad like my co-founders. My co-founders and I have known each other for a decade. We met about 10 years ago and just never stopped hanging out. And we got each other's back. And Career Karma is literally trying to give people the playbook to create that type of community and psychological support that gives them the same level of confidence and fire in their belly that we have to accomplish their own dreams.
Okay, that's super interesting. I have kind of like a thought experiment that I just thought of. I wanted to ask you about,
Okay.
which is obviously like you worked in investment banking, you worked in tech before you ever became like the CEO and founder of Career Karma, and now it's kind of taken off. You spoke about like the support network and those relationships and the amount of time it took to build it to that level. Do you think, looking back, that say that you just graduated university, you could have built a company like Career Karma at that point? Because I
No,
think there's a lot of okay. Can you kind of go into that? Like, why would you say that?
I think that most people go into wanting to start a company too fast. I think that like I actually think a lot of media that encourages entrepreneurship is kind of toxic a little bit early on,
Mm.
where it's not necessarily as toxic, it just skips steps. I think the ideal path is think deeply about what we asked earlier around like what your purpose is or what you ultimately want to do or what problems you face, what skills you want to develop. Let's say that you eventually want to be a CEO, right? So you want to probably learn how to sell or learn how to code first, all right? Okay, so pick one of those. Learn that through some kind of training, whether that is a boot camp or a college or something in Career Karma that you can check out at careerkarma.com/apply. Then work for a company. And the reason why you want to work for a company is because if you're going to build a company in the future, it needs to be tech driven, in my opinion. And if you never worked at a tech company, it's hard to know how to build a tech company. So work at a tech company that's software driven. The reason why you want to work at a company that's software driven is so that you can meet a friend or a potential co-founder, like how I did, like Archer and Timur, that you can trust, that is aligned with you for reasons that are deeper than money. If you find that friend that can be your co-founder, like if you decided to code, find somebody that can sell. If you decided to sell, find somebody that can code and start working on that solution to the problem that you identified earlier on the side while you're at the company. When that side project takes off and makes money, more money than you're getting paid, quit your job, then raise money, and then go. You see?
Yeah,
It's a
I
smarter approach. Not saying that the approach doesn't work, but like if I did it again, that's how I would do it. Now, like same type of thing about a village. Like let's say Career Karma goes public, which it will go public and be one of the biggest companies that's ever existed in humanity. After that, let's say that I want to start a company again. People will be like, "Would you do Y Combinator again?" And I say, "Yeah." Why? Because it gives me an unfair advantage. Like being part of that network gives you an unfair advantage. It's literally a compounding, growing community of entrepreneurs that are all successful that like all continue to help each other. Why wouldn't you take advantage of that? It's like free it's free like dominance for whatever
mm,
idea that you want to solve, you know, and guidance and advice. Like that's amazing, you know. So
mm. You spoke about unfair advantages. I think one interesting thing when I listen to a lot of successful people, and like this can be in business, like I love sports as well. It can be in like athletes, musicians. They talk about things like unfair advantages, and the way they frame it, I feel like they see a lot of their like L's or things that could be perceived as L's. They almost see those as like unfair advantages, like the lessons that they managed to learn and like how they managed to pivot. I'm interested for you, like, what's something that happened in your career that you thought, like, at the time you thought this is the worst thing ever, like, this is an L, and then you kind of turned it, and now it's like what you said earlier, like an unfair advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I never got anything the first time for the most part, you know. That's
Okay.
why, um, what I think I'll say like if you talk about L's, um, if you're getting rejected from something, that's if you're doing your best and you're getting rejected from something, there's a reason for it. You're either getting protected from something or you're being redirected towards something better. So rejection's God's protection, rejection's redirection. And so that's only true if you're doing your best and you did your homework. If you're getting rejected because you're not prepared, then like that's not P, you know?
Hmm. I'm actually
Like
like you say. Go ahead.
being prepared for and like doing everything right and like presenting your best self, like that's P. And like and whatever comes out, like you got to be comfortable with whatever it is, because that's like real like people that understand themselves do.
Okay, you mentioned preparation. Um, I kind of would you be able to tell the story kind of how you got into um you got your role at Bank of Montreal in investment banking? Because I think when I read your blog article, I think one of the key things that stood out was like the preparation. Like when the opportunity came and arrived, you were like ready for it. Can you kind of dive into that story and then also talk about like that preparation aspect?
Yeah, there was a blog called Mergers and Inquisitions, which is pretty much like the number one destination for advice to break into finance and break into Wall Street. It's kind of like the idea with Career Karma's blog too. It's like we want to have a comprehensive library of like career advice for any subject on the internet. Um, and what's cool is, you know, once you educate yourself on how this world works and how people get jobs, then there's a course that you can take called Breaking into Wall Street, which is kind of like boot camps or short courses like Coursera, Udemy, or college, right? So you can choose. Do you want to go to college for finance? Do you want to take their short course or whatever? I chose to take this short course. It was uh, 233 videos and 63 spreadsheets, and I did all of them. I built all the models. And once I learned the skills, then I studied how to go through the job search and what it takes to get those interviews, which is also a challenge. And I understood what's a win and what's a loss. Getting an interview alone is a win. So that made me feel good even if I failed the interview, right? So I
Mm,
mentally prepared myself, right?
mm.
Because like educating yourself alone is not enough to get the job that you want. It's mostly psychological. So, I mean, through a combination of doing all of those things, that's what got me to this point.
I'm interested to. You said educating yourself is not enough. It's also psychological. I think
It's mostly
for a lot of
psychological.
mostly psychological. I think for a lot of people that are just getting into the job market, maybe they're just graduating. Um, they wouldn't see it that way, right? Like they would think, oh, it's about my skills, it's about my grades, about where I went to college. Can you kind of dive deeper into why it's psychological?
The people that do the best at their job aren't always the smartest people,
Mm-hmm.
right? The people that like end up changing the world aren't naturally the greatest speaker, for example, right? Um, Skills only get you so far. Um, the way you use your skills and the way you work with others, um, is ultimately there's other factors, but like ultimately like what gets you to elevate. Um, and these days, people are starting to understand that credentials, um, resumes, years of experience, um, doesn't really matter. Like, what can you bring to the table, right? So, you know, if I come to you, you talked about confidence earlier,
Mm.
with the mindset that I'm a junior engineer, you're going to communicate with me like I'm junior. But if I come to you working at Spotify like I am an accomplished cello that has played at Carnegie Hall twice, that happens to know how to code, you're going to respect me.
Mm.
And you're going to want me more in that job at Spotify because I'm coming at you differently. You see?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's not just like the psychological aspect of it, it's like the way I present myself to you. Here's a better way to put it. If I don't believe in myself, how are you going to believe in me?
Mm.
If I don't believe in myself, if you don't believe in yourself, it's going to be extremely difficult to get anybody else to believe in you.
Mm.
So you have to get to the point where you think that you're the best thing that they never heard of. And sometimes you got to lie to yourself. You do have to be honest with yourself most of the time, but like sometimes you got to tell yourself, I'm the greatest programmer that ever lived. I'm the greatest CEO of all time.
Mm.
It's like Muhammad Ali said. He said, I said I'm the greatest before I ever was, right?
Mm.
Because, you know, if you think about it like this, if you're a hot company, every person that they interview is going to have the skills,
Mm.
right? They
Yeah.
can filter for skills. They can filter for GPA. They can filter for everything else. So then, actually, what actually makes you different, or what actually makes you special, is the stuff that makes you different. The stuff that you might not share on a resume.
Mm.
The non-professional aspects of you. And that's actually what you need to make, actually what you need to weave into your story that shines while you talk about your skills. Because at the end of the day, people want to know, can they work with you for hours, weeks, months, years, and feel good working with you. You see?
Yeah. No, that's really interesting, and I think um I don't know. I think that section of the interview will be like so useful for people that are coming out of university. Um, I'm honestly I'm only like 2 years into my career, and I think one of my biggest learnings has been like everyone's kind of just figuring it out. Like I think when you're a kid, you think that adults have everything figured out. There's a master plan. Everyone's kind of figuring it out. So when you can bring that confidence and you kind of the self awareness to know what you came from and how you can provide value, um, yeah, I think it sets you apart for sure. Um, so yeah, I think that's really good. Um, one other thing I wanted to ask you about is one thing that comes across is that you're quite patient. Let me know if I'm right in that. Like you're kind of you mentioned how you met your co-founders 10 years ago. Even when you were going after like the investment banking opportunity, you did those hundreds of videos, like you put the time and the work in. I'm interested, like, where does that patience come from? Because I'm sure there's also a side of you that wants it now, like you want to see it happen, right? Like, where does that come from?
Timing matters, right? Like I'm a musician, right? And understanding time is one of the most important parts of being a musician. Understanding, um, when to take a rest, understanding what's the time signature of a piece, understanding um um you know when to move in and out, like all of that matters. Like understanding if you can take more time or less time, all of that matters. Um, I'm a student of history, right? There's a lot of amazing ideas like Webvan, for example, that could have existed today if the technology was there, but it was the wrong time. Now you got
Mm.
Instacart and DoorDash, right? The only reason it didn't work back then is because smartphones didn't exist, right?
Mm.
Okay. Netflix is another good example. Netflix was like 15 years ahead of its time. Streaming technology wasn't here, so what did they do? They worked with DVDs in the mailbox to create a habit that set them up for what they're doing today, right? People are calling career karma like visionary, which it is, and like it had a crystal ball or an eight ball, which we did, but like, and the reason why they're saying that is because the pandemic is proving everything that we said right, with college enrollment being down, companies dropping the requirements to have a college degree, um, people wanting to find alternative types of training programs, community being extremely important, employers um, getting involved with internships and apprenticeships and so many other things that um, are validating our timing was right,
Mm.
right? We were doing this before everybody else was talking about it. And because we've been doing it for years, we are the main players. And because we're blessed to have access to people that have the most capital in the world, not just top tier and initialized capital that let her be an A, but SoftBank, 300 billion, Emerson Collective, over 20 billion, Imaginable Futures, multi-billion dollars. Like I could keep going, like Forest Bay Partners, like I say this because not only are investors women and people of color, they have unlimited capital to fund something that is effectively solving a problem and helping people.
Mm.
You understand?
Yeah.
I say that because it's the right idea at the right time with the right team, with the right investors, with the right users, with the right software. And assuming we continue doing this, we're going to be the biggest workforce development company of all time.
Mm. I have a question. I have a question for you, just based off what you just said, which is um, timing is obviously huge. I think there's a number of like entrepreneurs or people that would say like who are very successful who would say I got lucky in a sense because the timing was correct for things to come together for me. Does that mean that there's a chance? Like, what gives you so much confidence? Like, what are you seeing in the market that gives you so much confidence that it's the right time now for career karma?
Well, some people for sure, like they got lucky. And I'm not saying that like a lot of stuff that we're doing isn't lucky. Like as dark as COVID-19 is, it's a blessing in disguise for what we're building because everything that's happening with the great resignation and 4 million quitting jobs because they don't want to go to their old jobs is all potential users for career karma. There's over 10 million open jobs, which is the most in history. Like, I didn't know that that was going to happen. So, in a sense, you can say that, like, that's lucky timing. There's a really cool song by Russ, forget what it's called, but there's a verse that he says that direction's more important than speed, even though speed is important in startups. I think what's most important is for you to be directionally correct. And if you're directionally correct, then you'll you'll be hit with the serendipitous blessings that some people call luck, and I call favor.
Nice. Okay, so when you say When you say being directionally correct, um, what really kind of comes to my mind is like the ability to think clearly. Like if I read recently something that Navar Ravikant wrote, which is like if you look at a lot of billionaires, like Warren Buffett, for instance, he's really compensated at such a high degree because he makes really good decisions. And maybe he'll only make one decision a year, but it's so good that it's worth the billions and the capital that he has at his disposal. I want to give people something like practical that they can really learn from you, which is like, how do you mentioned being a visionary, like seeing things before they happen. I think there's a number of examples in your career of that. How do you think clearly? How do you see things early? Like what allows you to do that?
It's a hard one because I don't have a clear answer for it other than I talked about studying history. That's important, but also you have to pay attention to the news. The problem with the news these days is hard to tell what's real and fake. So you have to have a high filter for like what is the truth. Like really try to like sharpen not just like your EQ, but also like what is true versus not true. And if you're good at really having clarity on what the truth is, try to take all that information to understand how it's going to change, because change is inevitable. And my takeaway that I would tell people is as you're thinking about the decisions that you want to make, always bet on the inevitable.
Hmm.
So here's a good example. Do you think like student loans are 1.8 trillion? Do you think that it's gonna pop at some point? It
Yeah,
will. Like
yeah, for sure.
that's inevitable, right?
Hmm.
Um, College enrollment continues to drop. Col so you could argue whether college goes away or not, but will college change? Yes, that's inevitable. Um, College companies need to um, also change their recruiting strategies. Are they going to change? Yes. Like is technology going to take over every industry? Yes. 3 billion people aren't connected to the internet. Will they be connected to the internet? Yes. Those are all new users for Career Karma, right?
Hmm.
Companies have gone remote. They've gone online. You think that they're going to all 100% go back to the office? No. That's inevitable. The cat's out of the bag. Colleges were forced to go online. You think that they're all going to go back offline, or they're going to have both? It's inevitable, right?
Hmm.
Bet on the inevitable. So whenever you're analyzing trends, bet on the inevitable.
I love that. That's really interesting. Okay, cool. So when you're obviously you just went through a fundraising round. When you're pitching to potential investors, I'm interested some of like the pushback that you would get. Um, like you obviously mapped out a few things there that you think is inevitable, and to be honest, I think to a lot of people they would agree with that. Like, what is some of the for the people that would disagree with your vision? Like, what was some of the pushback that you were getting?
Yeah. So you probably heard the quote that there's riches and niches, right?
Mhm.
So imagine Facebook in the early days, right? They're building a social network for colleges. But now what are they? They've like connected the whole world. Okay. So what did Career Karma do in the beginning? They focused on boot camps. We focused on boot camps. And so some of the pushback in the beginning was like, boot camps are such a much smaller part of the $2.6 trillion post-secondary education market. It's not big enough. It's only $500 million. And you're like, Yeah, but like boot camps are literally reshaping the entire segment. Don't you see
Mm-hmm.
that? But you can't always see that because it's not fully the it's not visionary if everybody could see it.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know? It's not like brilliant if everybody's gonna get it in the beginning. After it's obvious, it's too late, right?
Yeah.
So I like what I'm telling you is the main pushback that we got in the beginning was too small of a market. Now they get it. Second, um, was um, I'm not sure if automation is gonna lead this reskilling thing, right? So, there was reports in McKinsey saying that 375 million workers are gonna switch careers between now and 2030. Um, Instead of going back to college, they're gonna rely on job training programs to find their next job. Okay. Um, so some people would argue robots aren't gonna come immediately; they're gonna come later. That was the
Mm.
pushback I got during YC. Then what happened? COVID-19 hit the world like a nuclear bomb and forced everybody to get a digital job or be broke because everybody was quarantined and you had to
Mm.
work from home. Okay. So that validated what I said before. The other pushback is, you know, colleges are the de facto way to go and everybody wants to send their kids to college. That's still ingrained. College brand is big, but like colleges now launch their own boot camps too,
Mm.
right? We work with over 50 university boot camps now.
Mm.
So it's a lot of pushback, but like those are probably like the biggest ones right there. And then the question is like, who pays for it? Is it students? Well, Career Commons is free, but even then, like schools have tuition, and yeah, like most of the schools that we work with don't require you to pay up front. They have deferred tuition or income share agreements, but even then, there's still a cost to it. Well, guess what? Employers got money. I spend a lot of money on recruiting, and there's players in the market that have $200 million a year coming from companies that are paying tuition for their talent and to attract talent. So, and there's unlimited opportunity there.
Mm.
So it's not
Okay.
about just picking a market and a problem that's big. It's like timing the market and also sequencing the market.
Mm.
You understand?
Yeah. Okay. One of my final questions, um, and I want to talk about you personally and kind of your growth. Um, I think obviously, uh, like we're both from minority backgrounds. We're both black. Um, if you go into like investment banking as an analyst, there's not like a huge amount of black people that work in that field. Obviously, you went into tech. After that, you raised a Series A as a founder. You raised a Series B. I guess I'm just saying there's not a huge amount of people that look like us that have achieved what you've done, and I think it's obviously increasing, but it's still not quite there. I'm interested, like, who are the people that you look to for like advice or mentorship or like who shows you the way? Because I'm assuming as you keep breaking through certain ceilings, there's less people that you can kind of resonate with that can show you the path forward and give you game and all these things. Like
That's
how do
true.
you do that?
Well, I'm a product of the matriarchy, so I have Phaedra Ellis Lamkin. She's one of my mentors. Aman Abuzaid. So Phaedra's the CEO of Promise. Aman Abuzaid, she's the CEO of Incredible Health. Um, Amira Yahweh, she's the CEO of Mars, another woman that pours into me. Joteka Edie, she's the CEO of Full Circle Strategies. Katrina Lake, who's a billionaire from Stitch Fix, an angel investor in Career Karma, she pours into me. Got the CEO of Opnus, one of our angels, who's the fastest growing billion-dollar company in India. He's pouring into me. Um, all of my investors pour into me. They're all successful people. Michael Seibel, he sold a company for $1 billion. Like you talked about a village, like I can name probably 10 plus billionaires in our cap table right now that got our back. And so if they say you're the average of the five people that you're surrounded by. So I'm surrounded by the right people. And if I don't know something, I'm gonna go to them for guidance. But then I'm also part of YC. I'm part of the Reforge network, right? So we're a Reforge partner. And then I also have executive coaching. I have Refound Coaching. Shout out to Jessica Montenegro, and she's my executive coach. Um, my team is amazing. Like my VP of people, our VP of people, Jessica Lamb, amazing. They like even though I'm CEO, I'm at the top of the hierarchy. Like I'm a servant leader, so I work for everybody else. So I look to them to hold me accountable. So I learn from my team as well. I learn from our users. I learn from my parents. I learn from my sister. I learn from my niece and nephew.
Hmm.
I One of our guiding principles at Career Karma is always be learning. If I don't have a open mind, if I have a closed mind, I'm not gonna grow. I'm not hiring people to be yes people. One of our guiding principles is dare to dream. If I don't have people that are challenging our way of thinking or challenging the status quo, we're not gonna grow and we're not gonna change the world.
Hmm.
So
Okay, nice.
yeah,
Okay, nice. I think this is my final question, and I want to give people this to take away, and hopefully they can implement in the same way that you have. Um, you mentioned some of the people that are on your cap table, some of the investors, some of the people that you know personally. How, say that I've just graduated university or I've just left high school or whatever, how can I, early in my career, start to put this kind of system, like this organization, this mentorship, these minds around me that can really help me flourish throughout my career? Like, how can I do that?
download Career Karma. Go to Career Karma. That's literally why I created it the way I created it, so
Yeah.
that you can have the same exact thing. Literally, you go to careerkarma.com/apply. You share what your goals are. If you don't know what it is, say you don't know what it is. We'll connect you to those people that can be that village and that guide for you, and you get everything that we had and more. And if we don't have it, we will bring it and add it to the community.
Okay, I love it. I love it. And I think, to be honest, I think that's the perfect way to finish off the episode.
Yeah,
I could honestly talk to you for hours, but like I think that's the perfect way to do it.
yeah, it
Thanks a
was
lot
good.
for coming on, man.
Yeah, no,
Wait, let me
thank you
just
for
stop the
having me
record.
too. That was smooth.